I run a car repair shop in Atlanta, and last Tuesday, this American woman storms in with her tires shredded like confetti. She parks her sedan right at my bay door and starts unloading about how someone must have sabotaged her car. I ask what happened. She says she hit a pothole on I-85 that was deep enough to swallow a small child, but insists it shouldn't have damaged anything because American engineering is the best in the world. I look at her wheel, which is bent at an angle that defies physics, and gently mention Atlanta has some of the worst potholes in the country. She cuts me off mid-sentence. That's communist propaganda. America invented roads. We literally wrote the manual on infrastructure. These cars are just made too cheap nowadays because everyone outsources to China. Tell her the pothole was probably there for months, and she could have reported it. She looks me dead in the eye and says potholes are a feature of freedom. It's not a bug, because in authoritarian countries, they force you to drive on perfect roads, which limits personal choice. She paid $1,900 for the repairs. Spent 10 minutes photographing her damaged rim to post online about shoddy manufacturing standards. Then drove off still muttering about how American roads are statistically flawless. According to her uncle who works in construction, my cousin teaches at a middle school in Oakland, and she brings her class on a walk around the neighborhood once a week for a geography lesson. Last month, they're strolling down Tyrrell Street when this American tourist starts taking photos of the road like it's a museum exhibit. One of the kids asks if he's okay. The guy explains he's from Germany and has never seen pavement this destroyed outside a war zone. My cousin tries to move the class along, but he keeps following them, genuinely fascinated. How do you drive on this? Is it a monument to something? 3 of the students have to explain their families avoid this street entirely because it ruins their car suspensions. The German guy pulls out his phone and starts comparing it to roads in Dresden that were literally bombed in 1945, and Tyrrell Street looks worse. An American parent on the field trip interrupts and says this is actually proof of our freedom because we choose not to waste taxpayer money on cosmetic fixes. Unliquored Europe, where they're forced to maintain roads through socialism. The German starts to respond, but my cousin just herds everyone toward the bus. The last thing she heard was the parent explaining to the confused tourist that American infrastructure is fine. We just prioritize individualism over collectivism, which apparently means accepting cratered streets as patriotic. I'm a building inspector in Washington, D.C., and I see American denial every single week. Yesterday, I'm evaluating a cracked parking garage when the owner, an American in his 50s, asks if I think the structural damage is coastal elite hysteria. The concrete's literally spalling off the support columns. I manage a metro station in Singapore. And 2 months ago, this American businessman gets off the train and immediately starts ranting at the information desk. My colleague calls me over. The guy's furious because the subway was creepily efficient. He'd arrived at the platform exactly when the app said his train would come. The train arrived within 15 seconds of that prediction, and he finds the whole thing dystopian. Nobody's train system works that perfectly, he tells me. You're clearly manipulating the arrival times in the app to create the illusion of competence. I used to work in Boston, and the T is unpredictable because that's authentic. It reflects real human operations. I try to explain we use automated systems that track trains in real time and optimize scheduling, but he cuts me off. He insists American subways are more honest because their delays prove they're not hiding anything from the public. When I mention Singapore's system handles 6 million trips daily with minimal issues, he scoffs and says that's exactly what an authoritarian government would claim. He pulls out his phone to show me a photo of a stopped Red Line train in Boston from 2019, presenting it as evidence that unpredictability builds character. Then he asks if we have a complaint department for systems that work too well, because he wants to file a report. My colleague politely hands him a tourist map, and he leaves, muttering about how Americans invented mass transit and we should show some respect. I work at a public library in Seoul, and last week an American grad student comes in to use our study rooms. She's amazed we have floor-to-ceiling windows, individual climate control, and booking systems that let you reserve a space online. She sits down, plugs in her laptop at the free charging station, then immediately starts calling her friends back in Philadelphia to rant. I'm shelving books nearby so I hear everything. She's going on about how this is clearly a propaganda stunt. that Korea must have built this one premium library to impress foreigners while everyone else studies in crumbling buildings. Her friend must ask a question because she responds, "No, I haven't checked other libraries yet. But I already know this is the exception." America has the Library of Congress, which means we invented the concept of public libraries. There's no way an entire city has facilities this nice. Another student, a local, overhears and mentions that Seoul has over 140 public libraries, and most have similar setups. The American dismisses this as impossible because maintaining that many nice buildings would bankrupt any city, and she knows this because her hometown library in Philly has had a leaking roof since 2015. She then spends 20 minutes on her laptop searching for evidence that Korean libraries are secretly falling apart, finds nothing, and concludes the search results must be censored. Before she leaves, she asks me if the furniture is rented just for appearances. I tell her it's standard issue for all branches. She nods knowingly and says, "That's exactly what you'd say if it was rented." My brother works security at a government building in Tokyo, and last month, this American consultant shows up for a meeting. She walks into the lobby, looks around at the spotless floors and modern lighting, and immediately asks if they cleaned specially because foreigners were visiting. My brother explains they clean like this every single day. She laughs and says that's economically impossible unless Japan has some kind of slave labor system for janitorial work. He tells her the building management company employs a regular cleaning crew with union wages. She's not buying it. In America, our government buildings look lived in because we prioritize function over form. That's why DC's metro stations have mystery puddles and flickering lights. We're too busy running the free world to worry about aesthetics. My brother doesn't respond, just hands her a visitor badge. She heads to her meeting, but comes back an hour later to inspect the bathrooms, convinced they must be keeping one fancy lobby while hiding disaster everywhere else. She finds the bathrooms immaculate, with heated seats and bidet functions, and concludes this proves the whole building is a Potemkin village designed to trick Americans into thinking Japanese infrastructure is better. When my brother mentions that most public buildings in Tokyo maintain similar standards, she shakes her head and says, "I've seen the Pentagon bathrooms. If America's defense headquarters has normal toilets, there's no way an entire country can afford heated seats. You're clearly in massive debt." She leaves fully convinced she's uncovered a conspiracy. I'm a civil engineer in Taipei, and I was showing an American delegation around our recently renovated MRT stations last spring. Everything's going fine until one of them, a city planner from Detroit, notices our electronic ticketing system has almost zero downtime. She asks how often the machines break. I tell her maybe once every few months, and when they do, we fix them within hours. She stops walking and turns to her colleague. "This is wasteful. They're over-maintaining. In Detroit, we let things break naturally and fix them when absolutely necessary. That's fiscal responsibility." I mentioned that preventing breakdowns is actually cheaper than emergency repairs. But she's already moved on to a new complaint. She's staring at a station map that shows train frequencies during peak hours, trains every 2 to 4 minutes. "This is authoritarian," she announces. "You're forcing people to be punctual by making the trains too frequent. Americans value flexibility, so our trains come when they come. It teaches patience and adaptability." Her colleague agrees and adds that unpredictable transit builds problem-solving skills. I point out that predictable service helps people get to work on time, but she waves this off. Work-life balance isn't about arriving on time, it's about accepting uncertainty. That's freedom. Before they leave, she asks if I've ever considered making the system less efficient to give commuters a more authentic experience. I tell her, we prefer efficiency. She takes notes and mutters something about how Taiwan doesn't understand the philosophy of managed decay. I manage a restaurant in Osaka. A few months back, this American couple walks in and seems confused by how clean the dining area is. The floors are spotless, the tables gleam, and you can see your reflection in the windows. They sit down, order ramen, and the wife keeps glancing around like she's waiting for something to go wrong. Halfway through the meal, she flags me down and asks, "Is today a special occasion? Did you guys clean up because of an inspection?" I tell her we maintain this standard every day. Her husband laughs and says that's mathematically impossible for a restaurant with this much foot traffic. He pulls out his phone and shows me pictures of diners in Cleveland with sticky floors and wobbly tables. See, this is what real restaurants look like. Your place is to clean, which means you're either lying about your hours or you're not busy enough to matter. I explain that Japanese restaurants take cleanliness very seriously, and most places keep similar standards. The wife shakes her head and says, in America, they know a restaurant is good if it's a little grimy because that means the staff is too busy cooking to worry about mopping. She then insists our food must be overpriced to afford this level of cleaning. When I bring them the check, and it's cheaper than most American casual dining, she examines it like it's counterfeit and asks if we're hiding fees somewhere. They leave a 2% tip and tell me they're doing me a favor by not reporting us for false advertising. I work the counter at a hawker center in Singapore. And last week, this American tech bro sits down with his Laksa and immediately starts live streaming. I'm wiping down tables nearby, and he's talking into his phone about how shocked he is that a food court this size doesn't smell like garbage. This is sus chat, he says. I've been to food courts in American malls, and they all have that authentic ode to grease trap. This place smells like actual food. Either they're pumping in fake air freshener, or they're deep cleaning every night, which would be cost prohibitive. Someone in his chat must ask a question because he responds, no, I haven't seen rats yet, but that's also weird. American food courts have rats because that means they're lived in and real. This place is sterile, which is honestly more dystopian than comforting. He films himself walking to the bathroom, which is clean with soap and paper towels. And he treats this like evidence of a cover-up. They want you to think this is normal, but I've used the bathrooms at South Station in Boston. That's reality. This is propaganda. And he comes back, he asks me if the government fines us for being dirty. I tell him we maintain standards because it's good for business and public health. He nods slowly and says, that's exactly what someone in a fine-based system would say. X. He finishes his Laksa. Rates it a 6 out of 10 because it didn't give him food poisoning like authentic street food should. Then leaves. I run a coffee shop in Seoul, and a couple months ago, this American influencer comes in and orders an iced Americano. She sits by the window, takes about 40 photos of her drink, then starts a video. I'm making espresso behind the counter, so I catch most of her rant. She's telling her followers that Korean cafes are trying too hard because the bathroom, it's a proper ventilation system, and the walls aren't covered in peeling paint. Back in Brooklyn, we embrace imperfection, she says. My favorite coffee shop has a bathroom door that doesn't close all the way and exposed pipes with chipped paint. That's authentic. This place looks like it was designed by a corporation. A regular customer nearby leans over and mentions that most Seoul cafes maintain good conditions because of health codes and customer expectations. The influencer waves her off. Health codes are regulatory overreach. In America, we let the market decide. If your bathroom's gross, people just stop coming. That's freedom. She then pivots to complaining that the Wi-Fi is too fast, claiming it's ruining her creativity because slow internet forces you to be present. When she goes to pay, she's shocked that the card reader works on the first try and doesn't require 3 attempts and a sacrifice to the payment gods. She films herself using it and captions the video when infrastructure works too well. Red flag. I watch her leave and immediately post a 3-star review saying the cafe lacks character because nothing was broken. I'm a food safety inspector in Guangzhou. And last year I'm doing a routine check at a noodle shop when this American food blogger walks in. She's filming everything for her channel. I'm reviewing the kitchen logs when she approaches me and asks if I'm here because someone got sick. I explain it's a regular inspection, not a response to complaints. She seems disappointed. In the States, health inspectors only show up if there's a problem. You must have way more violations here if you're doing routine checks. I tell her it's the opposite. Regular inspections prevent problems. She doesn't believe me and starts filming the kitchen, looking for evidence of disaster. The kitchen's clean, the storage is organized, and the temperatures are all logged correctly. She keeps poking around, increasingly frustrated. Finally, she turns to the owner and asks, "How much do you pay him to pass these inspections?" The owner's baffled. I show her my official inspection badge and explain that bribery would cost me my job and possibly criminal charges. She rolls her eyes and says American food bloggers have taught her that all inspectors in Asia are corrupt. And if I'm claiming otherwise, I'm part of the cover-up. She posts a video later that week titled, "Why You Can't Trust Food Safety in China?" and uses footage of the spotless kitchen as proof that it's too perfect to be real. The owner shows me the video, and we just laugh. I'm a taxi driver in Bangkok, and a few weeks ago I pick up this American couple from their hotel. They're heading to the Grand Palace, and the whole ride there complaining about how the streets are too well marked. The husband keeps saying, in New York, you have to know where you're going because half the street signs are missing or facing the wrong way. That's how you separate tourists from real New Yorkers. His wife agrees and says clear signage removes the adventure from travel. I'm navigating through traffic, which is admittedly heavy, but the roads themselves are in decent shape. She notices and comments, these roads are suspiciously smooth. How do you afford to maintain them? I explain that Bangkok has an extensive road maintenance program funded by taxes and tolls. She's skeptical. In America, we believe in small government, so our roads develop character through natural aging. Potholes are a feature, not a bug. They teach drivers to stay alert. I point out that potholes cause billions in vehicle damage every year in the US. Her husband jumps in with, "That's the price of freedom. I'd rather dodge potholes than live under a regime that forces smooth roads on everyone." When we arrive at the palace, the wife asks if I'm paid by the government to lie about infrastructure. I tell her I'm a private contractor who just drives a cab. She tips me in loose change and tells me to spend it on road repair advocacy. My sister works at the airport in Shanghai, and last month, she's helping an American family check in for their flight back to Los Angeles. The father's ranting about how Pudong Airport is unnecessarily fancy with its high ceilings, art installations, and functional air conditioning. My sister's trying to process their boarding passes, but he won't stop talking. Lax has personality because it's a little run down. You know you're in a real airport when the bathroom has a flickering light and mysterious stains. This place looks like a mall. It's sterile. His teenage daughter mentions that she liked the free Wi-Fi, and the fact that everything was clearly labeled in multiple languages. He cuts her off. That's because they don't trust their own people to figure things out. Americans are self-reliant. We don't need signs every 5 feet telling us where to go. We ask around, we problem solve, we build community through confusion. Right. My sister finishes their check-in and hands them the passes. The mother looks at the departure board, which updates in real time with accurate gate information, and says, "I bet half these times are fake." In the US, our boards show delays because that's honest. This board is too perfect. Before they leave, the father asks my sister if she's ever been to an American airport. She says she has. She connected through JFK once. He beams and says, "Then you know what a real airport feels like. This is just smoke and mirrors." She watches them head towards security and wonders how they'll react to having their bags scanned efficiently, without a 2-hour wait. I'm a train conductor on the bullet train between Tokyo and Kyoto, and last spring, an American travel writer is in first class, taking notes for an article. About 20 minutes into the trip, he flags me down and asks why we're going so fast. I tell him we're traveling at around 285 kilometers per hour, which is standard for the Shinkansen. He looks alarmed. That's too fast. America's trains go slower because speed isn't everything. It's about the journey, not the destination. I mention that Japanese trains are designed for speed and safety, and our safety record is excellent. He's not impressed. Safety is subjective. Amtrak has delays and occasional derailments, and that keeps people humble. Your trains are never late, which creates unrealistic expectations. I explained that punctuality is a core feature of our service. The average delay is measured in seconds per year. He writes this down like it's evidence of something sinister. In America, we value spontaneity. If a train's an hour late, you learn patience. If it derails, you learn resilience. Your system is too controlled. When we arrive in Kyoto exactly on schedule, he seems almost disappointed. He asks if I've ever considered adding a random delay feature to make the experience more authentic. I tell him we prefer reliability. He publishes an article 2 weeks later, titled, "Why Japan's Trains Are Too Good for Their Own Good," and argues that infrastructure excellence stifles personal growth. I operate a ferry service between Hong Kong and Macau, and a couple months back, this American businessman is on board for a day trip.